So we're here today with international investigative journalist Annie Hylton. Annie writes about gender, immigration, human rights, conflicts in the Middle East, Central America, East Africa, among other things. She has recently written an article for Dissent magazine called Dirty Laundry, exposing the abuses in the laundry industry, especially as it pertains to immigrants in the United States of America. Annie, welcome to the Brad and Squeeze Show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So give us a few examples. You have uncovered a lot of sexual harassment in your article. You uncovered a lot of dangerous work conditions, especially in the commercial laundry industry. Give us a few examples of what you've uncovered.
By far, the most common thing that I heard from people is just lack of basic safety equipment and training. So, the women who I profiled in my piece told me that they didn't even have gloves to wear. So when they were dealing with laundry, some people would get poked by syringes and their fingers would start bleeding. Some of these locations deal with hospital linens, and so dirty syringes can be thrown in with the linens.
Right.
And one woman even told me that she found a fetus in the sheets. Yeah, I didn't include that, obviously, because I wasn't able to really verify it, but there are some pretty extreme examples, and the most extreme being, of course, death with some of these larger machinery.
And there was also, you uncovered sexual harassment as well.
Indeed, yes. For example, one of the women who I spoke with a number of times, who's at the center of the piece, was sexually harassed for months and months and months by her manager, and he would touch her inappropriately and send her notes and try to get her to have sex with him, and at one point touched her genital area, and this sort of happened within the facility, not to that extent, but many similar complaints.
Did you ever speak to anybody about them complaining to a supervisor or complaining to whether there's a licensing bureau or whatever for laundromats? What were the consequences of their complaints, if they did make any complaints?
Yeah, so in this instance, the women were told that they had a union, that they were represented by a union, but every time they tried to call, they didn't get a response. So they didn't really know where to turn. And, eventually one thing led to another, and a number of them had gone to a nun in the community who then led them to the attorneys. And then the EEOC picked up the case, and what ended up happening is that a number of the women faced retaliation, like lowered hours, more laborious work. I think they knew what to expect, and they decided that they were going to go forward anyway. And a couple of them left just because it became too difficult. And, I think a lot of them, I think every single one of the women involved in that case has since left the laundry.
And how many women were involved in that case that you were aware of?
8 of them.
8 of them. And there was a settlement.
So, yes.
Are you aware of what it was? Are you free to talk about it? Or it was a confidential settlement?
Yeah, it's part of the public record. So it was $582,000 divided by the 8 women. And then as part of that, the company agreed to incorporate sexual harassment training into the workplace.
It's important to make sure that people understand their rights. One of the things that I tell my clients as an attorney is never allow anybody to threaten you about your immigration. As a matter of fact, turn it back on them. You want to call immigration? Here's the telephone number. Be my guest. Don't ever be scared, because that's the ultimate power over somebody, an employer has, to say, I'm going to call immigration, but they're basically shooting themselves in the foot because now immigration's going to fine them for hiring illegal aliens as well. So it's very rare that employers will actually call the immigration service on their own employee because it's going to actually affect their own business as well. Do you have any last words or thoughts before we say goodbye? And again, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. I think my last words would be, if you're experiencing something like this, like the women who I talk about in this piece, I know it's difficult and I know it's scary, but you need to tell somebody and you need to get help because you don't deserve this. And there are rights in this country, even if people tell you otherwise. You deserve better.
I agree with you 100%, and this is something that needs to be said, and it's probably not only in the laundry industry, but many industries, and I'm glad that you put a spotlight on it, and again, thank you very much for coming on the show and providing your insight. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, you're welcome.
There you have it. Very
right.
good piece.
Yes.
And that's what we do here at the Brad Squeeze Show. We give you insights and, a lot of things that's happening in and around the world and the country right here. We're not just biased and one-sided with what it is that we do with immigration. We like sharing information.
And that stuff happens in a lot of industries, Squeeze.
Yes, it does.
I mean, it's not just the laundry industry. It's a lot of industries. It happens in the meatpacking industry, probably happens in the farming industry. It happens in a lot of industries where immigrants get taken advantage of, not just from an immigration standpoint, but low-wage workers getting taken advantage of in many, many different ways. In unsafe working conditions, in sexual harassment, people with power over other people. Happens everywhere.
There you go.